Okay, so I can see that I am generating some sound. That's a good thing. And it appears that we are actually live in some way. Sweet. And someone is here, I believe. Maybe. I don't know. So if you can hear me, anyone who is here, go ahead and let me know. Send me a message. And we will go ahead and get going soon, at least. Did tell everybody that we would start at 9 o'clock, but not quite there yet. Not quite 9 o'clock. Morning, all. There we go. We'll see what comes. I have to go get my eggs. So hold on a second. You can take a look at my my bookshelf and my record player. Yeah, and the downstairs computer. Be right back. Okay. I have my eggs. Fantastic. We're going to edit all of this out of the saved live stream. All right. So it looks like we've got 3 people on. 2 people. That number keeps going down. I love it. That's funny. The all too exciting Global 10 review. Something tells me that those folks who were leaving didn't want to review yet. So anyway, happy Martin Luther King Day to you. I think I picked a fight on Facebook. I didn't really intend to, but I posted something about Martin Luther King today, and about an interview that he gave to NBC News in 1967. It was really quite something, and it's very apropos today. And something tells me I'm going to see a bevy of comments when I return. It's always fun to get in a little bit of trouble now and again. So for those who are on, what questions do you have? We have a midterm coming up on Wednesday. Oh, so that's hot. Dang, son. Almost said words I shouldn't. That's hot. Anyway. Oh, hey, Bella. How's it going? Imperialism. What specifically about imperialism are you thinking? The whole unit? Something specific? What specifically? Key to good eggs, by the way. Cajun seasoning. Really good. You just stick them in a mug in a microwave. It's pretty awesome. Well, while we wait for more clarification, imperialism is it's the act. It's a stronger country taking over a weaker country, and stronger doesn't necessarily mean that they're better. There's the built-in assumption from the mother country that they are. So Imperialism happens for a couple different reasons. Largely, it's mother countries looking for raw materials and markets for goods, places where they can sell their stuff. So when you're thinking about imperialism, you are thinking largely about capitalist countries, countries that are industrialized with the ability to colonize elsewhere. Oh, specifically Japan. Okay, sweet. Awesome. So the reason, one of the things that we looked at with Japan was the difference between their response to Western powers and China's response to Western powers. You may remember that when China was faced with foreign influence, which was largely the British forcing their way into China by means of military conquest or by means of selling opium. The Chinese responded by rejecting that kitchen seasoning. This is the worst video ever. They responded by rejecting that foreign influence. They did everything possible to push away the British. In part, that was because the British were forcing their way into China, but also there's a little bit of that Chinese ethnocentrism, that idea that the Chinese genuinely believed that their stuff and their way of life was far superior than Europeans. So the Chinese felt that there was very little need to cross those cultures. Whereas the Japanese, when they interacted with foreigners under the Tokugawa shogunate, they had that similar kind of rejecting of foreigners. But when the Americans arrived in the 1850s, the Japanese were presented with an overwhelming force, and the Japanese responded differently than the Chinese. They looked at that force and said, well, we can't take on a conflict with the Americans, so let's treaty with them, and then let's see what we can get in this deal for us. And so the Japanese signed the Treaty of Kanagawa with the United States, which allows access to Japan for the United States primarily. And in exchange, it allows those two cultures to cross-pollinate a little bit. So Japan gains from us some military expertise, structuring public schools and some other municipal things, like government-based things. And the United States gains a refueling port in Japan, which is what we wanted. So by opening that door, the Japanese begin the period that we looked at called the Meiji Restoration. The Meiji Restoration, the thing to remember with that is to connect Meiji with modernization. It marks the end of the Tokugawa shogunate and the entrance of Japan into the modern age, where Japan starts selectively borrowing from other European powers. So they'll borrow from Germany, they'll borrow from Britain, they'll borrow from us. And instead of rejecting that foreign influence, they'll accept it. They'll take what they need and put their own Japanese spin on it, and then modernize. And they'll modernize extremely quickly. So by the time we hit World War I, about 40 years later, Japan's a player. Japan is imperializing already into Korea and into northern China. They're fighting the Russians for control of Korea. They're fighting the Chinese for resources in northern China. So the big deal with Japan, and I'll type this in, is Meiji Restoration, and that equals modernization and Japan entering the imperialism game. Game in Asia. Does that answer your question, Bella? If not, add in the chat over here. It's probably over here for you guys. It might be over there, but probably over here. Add like a clarifying question. And I see that Dylan is on. Oh, Bella. Yay. Cool. All right. Yeah, the thing that's really important is knowing the differences between the way the Chinese responded to imperialism and the way the Japanese responded to imperialism. The other thing that's really important to notice is that it's like 0 friggin' degrees outside and my nose is a little runny, so I'm going to go get a Kleenex. It's right over there, though. So you should still hear my voice a little bit as I grab the box of Kleenex and I come back over here and I sit in said chair. Cool. All right. We've got some more questions. What about the 2 wars Japan fought with Russia? Okay. Great. And Lionheart. Wasn't there also a mnemonic? Yes. Yes, there was. Let me get to Lionheart first, Dylan, then I'll come back to the 2 wars. And then we'll go to Age of Absolutism. Sweet. With Meiji, there is a mnemonic that's in your notes that is less important than Brits, but the key to the mnemonic is that Japan will modernize in some key areas, and those areas will be military, tech, education, and industrialization. And that will lead to imperializing mainland China. That's the key, like remembering the specifics of MEIJI, not all that important. But connecting Meiji with modernization and also remembering, just like BRITS for the Brits, why Britain industrialized, Japan will have very similar processes because Japan is an island nation just like Britain. So they will experience very similar once they modernize, once they're starting to industrialize, they'll experience very similar things. They need specific resources. They need access to markets. They're an island nation, so they will be adept at the sea, just like the British. They just become the British Empire of the South Pacific. Ooh, sweet. Man, we've got 19 people on. This is cool. I hope this is helpful. I really do. Because I'm just sitting here with my coffee and my eggs. And I was just going to cause trouble on Facebook, but this is much more fun. Okay. So Dylan, you said, what about the 2 wars Japan fought against Russia? Okay. Japan did not fight 2 wars against Russia. They only fought one, the Russo-Japanese War. And the Russo-Japanese War was fought between Tsar Nicholas II's Russian army and the Japanese over control of the Korean Peninsula. And that's the first time that we see a European power defeated by an Asian power. The other war that you're thinking of is the Sino-Japanese War. And the Sino-Japanese War is the war between Japan and China. Sorry for the emphasis. Between China and Japan. So not 2 wars against Russia, only one. But both the Sino-Japanese and Russo-Japanese are about controlling resources in China and about colonizing China. So good question there. Let's see. Ben. Oh, Bella said something about Age of Absolutism. What's Ben got? Can we please review Napoleon when you're finished? Oh, yes. Haley and Ben both want some Napoleon, and Bella wants Age of Absolutism. Basically the same spot. So we'll go there. Okay. Tell you what, Cajun eggs are fantastic. And JC, can we also go over any important people that we need to know? Yes, we can do that. We will go over every important person that you need to know, like Napoleon. Very nice. Okay, Age of Absolutism. Age of Absolutism is right at the beginning of the school year. We were looking at absolute monarchs. And the key to cool. I will try and stay on top of this chat, but the questions are coming in. Okay. So if I miss your question, just ask it again. Age of Absolutism. This is the era of absolute monarchs. Kings that have total power, and that power is passed down from father to son. Generally, it's not passed down to the women because it's a very patriarchal European setup. We're looking at a feudal culture, so you have a very strict social hierarchy. These are your triangles with the wealthy at the top and the peasants at the bottom, and sometimes any number of social strata in between. An absolute monarch is someone who says that their power is derived from God. So the church and the state, the church and the king, they kind of work hand in hand. The church gives power to the king. The church affirms that power, saying that, yes, the king is God's chosen vessel on earth. And in exchange, the king tends to give a lot of power to the church, such as land ownership, no need to pay taxes, that sort of thing. So it's a heavily connected church and state. One of the many reasons that during the Revolution, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, they wanted to disconnect the church and the state. Dylan says absolute monarchs are like dictators, but fancier. Very, very similar. So you could think it's just who gives you power. Oftentimes, if you asked a dictator, like a modern day dictator, of which there are many, by the way, and we will be looking at them on the other side of break. That's going to be fun. We're going to cause a little bit of trouble because it's fun. Why not? Cajun eggs. An absolute monarch is very similar to a dictator, except that if you asked a dictator where their power comes from, they would say more than likely something about themselves. Whereas if you ask an absolute monarch where their power comes from, they would say from God. So slightly different, but on the ground for the average everyday person, not all that different in experience. An absolute monarch, an example of an absolute monarch might be Louis XIV. Where it connects to the French Revolution is Louis XVI. And so to get from French Revolution, from Age of Absolutism to the French Revolution, we go through the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment is all about that question of power. Who died and made you king? So, Cajun eggs. They're good when they go into your belly, not so good when they go into your lungs. That's okay. Coffee makes everything better. So your absolute monarchs are questioned by Enlightenment thinkers, and that's the point where I was mentioning that you can't question power and then have everything go back to normal. Once you start asking those questions about who died and made you king, at that point, you kind of have to change something. And so that's when you start to get into the era of revolutions. I see that Lionheart has said, if Napoleon crowned himself, doesn't that make him a dictator? Absolutely. Napoleon crowned himself emperor, and emperor, dictator, basically the same thing. Lionheart is Lev. Sweet. Good to see you, Lev. And Lev, you're absolutely correct. Napoleon did crown himself dictator, essentially. So absolutism is that era of feudalism and kings and queens that kind of owned Europe through the Middle Ages all the way through till scientific revolution. And then there was a question about Age of Absolutism, Napoleon. Can we go over Napoleon? Okay. So we're knee-deep in the French Revolution. Robespierre has been executed by his own folks because he had kind of become consumed with power, as power tends to do, and had started essentially executing those folks in his own party. Boop. It's so much better. Now I don't have to stare at that lamp. Robespierre had started executing those people in his own party for essentially not being radical enough. And the Jacobins aren't going to stand for that very long. So Robespierre is taken care of. And then you get a series of governments that are basically somewhat corrupt. They're somewhat corrupt. They're somewhat ineffective, and thus they change hands regularly. The one that we landed on for a little bit was the 5-man directory. And the 5-man directory is quite literally 5 people who are the wealthy and powerful in France, and they are in charge of making law. Napoleon is one of the military generals that is engaged in conflict in Egypt under the 5-man directory. And upon his return to France as a victorious military general, which victorious is a little bit questionable as well, because it's not as though he was amazingly successful in Egypt. It's just that he was an incredible PR guy, and he made himself out to be much more successful than he actually was. Upon returning to France, he sees that his government is rather ineffective and takes it upon himself to establish a new government by the term coup d'état, by a military takeover of the government. And if you look back in your notes, I believe that we had a reading on that, where you read actually Napoleon's own statement as to why he chose to overthrow his own government. Upon doing so, this is in about 1801 or so, he upon doing so, he will establish himself as the seat of government, and then in 1804 he will crown himself emperor, and that is where that tricky line happens between, are you a leader that the people choose, or are you a dictator? And at the end of the day, he winds up becoming the emperor of France, which also implies that he needs to establish himself an empire. So he's going to wind up attempting to take over much of Europe. I see there's some conversation happening over here about Napoleon. Napoleon started off as a general. Yes. Legion. Who is Legion again? Who is that? Because you're doing really well. It's great. Snitters6 says Napoleon was exiled twice. He was. The one that you need to be concerned about is, well, you don't really need to be concerned about either one. You just need to know that he was exiled, and that he will live out the rest of his days in exile. And that you do need to know that the response following Napoleon, the nations of Europe are going to gather together. They're going to meet in Vienna for the Congress of Vienna, which will kind of reset the game board in Europe and reestablish limited monarchies and that sort of thing. It's cool to see you guys chatting over there, by the way. That's really neat. So, more eggs. Hopefully I'm answering your questions, by the way, Bella. If I didn't get to enough about absolutism, or Haley, if I didn't get to Haley and Ben, if I didn't get to enough about Napoleon, let me know. Okay. Let's see. Who is Legion? Man. He or she is just killing it over here with Napoleon. Man. Latin American revolutions. Yes, we can go over those. As I am continuing to finish my eggs. More eggs equals more coughing. Yes, that is true. Okay, so let's see. Latin American revolutions. Sure. The ones that you need to know. You need to know Toussaint Louverture in Haiti. You need to know Simón Bolívar in Venezuela. And you need to know Jose de San Martin in Argentina. The one to focus on, though, is Simón Bolívar. He's the one that we actually read documents from. And so he's the one I would zero in on. When you look in your notes, you should see a small packet of documents that include things like some photographs of statues, currency, and a couple speeches from Simón Bolívar. The overarching things about Latin American revolutions, they are an effect of the French Revolution and the American Revolution. So they happen afterwards. And also that's one of my cats, by the way. Latin American revolutions happen after the American and the French, and that they are mostly liberating from Spain. The exception to that is José de Sem. No. The exception to that is Toussaint Louverture, who is liberating the colony of Haiti from France under Napoleon. So beyond that, more than likely, the Latin American revolutions are not going to be a huge factor on your midterms or on your Regents exam, more than likely. But yeah, hope that answers or at least focuses your review, Ethan. Again, Legion is just killing. Super cool. Let's see. Hey, Jacqueline. No, don't worry about your nicknames. That's cool. Nicknames are awesome. Let's see. Turning points of World War I. Okay. Turning points of World War I. Yeah, I think Legion is another adept history person, probably more adept than I am. Legion is just here for the food. Turning points in World War I. You want to be concerned with two specific things. The Battle of Tannenberg on the Eastern Front comes up occasionally. That's a huge Eastern Front battle between the German army and the Russians. The Battle of the Somme on the Western Front comes up sometimes. That's a major month-long, like there are several battles of the Somme, kind of like there are several battles of Verdun. That one comes up sometimes. The turning point that we looked at, because we're American, we tend to see the entrance of the Americans into World War I as a major turning point. I think that's a heavily biased viewpoint, but it's substantiated. The Russians will treaty with Germany in 1917, officially signing it in 1918. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, and then they leave and we enter. And remember, we're nothing more than a fresh army, an army that hasn't spent years and years and years and years in the trenches. So there's nothing that makes the American army any more skilled or, some sort of world-class fighting force. We just had not been in the trenches for years. And so we come in with a fresh army. That winds up becoming a major turning point in World War I. Beyond that, vital events of World War I. Vital events of World War I. Battle of Tannenberg, Battle of the Somme. The Ain River, which is where the French first entrench. That's pretty important. Other major events, I guess you could get into the sinking of the Lusitania, the Zimmermann telegram, because that kind of motivates the United States to get in. Let's see, other major events: Battle of Tannenberg on the Eastern Front, Treaty of Brest-Litovsk on the Eastern Front. Yeah, I would say those are the major events. And then beyond that, you want to know causes and effects. You want to know the beginning of the war and the end of the war. Those are the key things. So let's see. Who's Jose something from and Martin from? Says CC Utter. Jose de San Martin. Jose de San Martin is a military general from Argentina, and he will be leading revolutions against the Spanish in the early the first 20 years of the 1800s. He'll be pushing up from the southern part of South America all the way up to Simon Bolivar's location in Ecuador, and then he will be relinquishing his army. Yeah. Sorry, I was distracted by Legion again. Legion is definitely killing. Yep. Mania works. We use MAIN as our acronym, and then the assassination being a separate thing, but Mania is the same thing. It's awesome. Awesome. So yeah. Man, this top chat is totally distracting, but awesome. So Jose de San Martin and Toussaint Louverture, they tend not to come up as much on exams. So because we're focusing primarily on stuff that you'll need for the midterm exam, they're less of a focus, for better or worse. Probably for worse, but they're less of a focus. I wouldn't get overly hung up on them. The midterm mainly going to talk about America's entrance as the turning point. Yeah, for the most part, yes. The midterm is going to focus. We're talking World War I. The midterm will likely you'll likely see the United States as the turning point in World War I and our entrance therein. Important people. Okay, so we'll go unit by unit. Important people that tend to come up. Reboot with some more eggs. Probably means more coughing. From the Enlightenment, need to know your Enlightenment philosophers. John Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau, Voltaire, Wollstonecraft. Then from the French Revolution, you should know Napoleon. You should know Robespierre. You should know Louis XVI. Then from Latin American revolutions, you should know Jose de San Martin, Simon Bolivar, and Toussaint Louverture. Then we go from there into nationalism. You got to know Otto von Bismarck. He's a big deal. Know Otto von, definitely know him, and know the principles around the unification of those German states into Germany. Very important. Then we get into the Industrial Revolution. You're definitely going to want to know. Oh, I'm going too fast. I'm sorry. Backing up, pushing pause. More eggs for to slow me down. So to answer the question about the eggs, yes, you crack the eggs directly into the mug. Stir them with a fork. Stick it in the microwave 1 minute per egg. Some Cajun seasoning. Happy. Okay. So when you get to the Industrial Revolution, you definitely want to know Adam Smith and Adam Smith as the author of The Wealth of Nations, and Then you want to know Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels as the authors of Communism. And let's see, Industrial Revolution. You should probably also know Michael Sadler, author of the Sadler Report. You should know that. Then 10.4, imperialism. You should definitely know King Leopold II. You should also know King Leopold II and Belgium and the rubber fields and that sort of thing. You should also know who the Boers are in South Africa. You should know, let's see, important people, imperialism that we talked about. You should know Commodore Matthew Perry and Emperor Matsuhito in Japan. He's the guy who's credited with the Meiji Restoration stuff. 10.4, imperialism. There weren't too many other like specific people in 10.4, just more locations and wars and treaties and that sort of thing. 10.5, World War I. Important people. The Archduke, Franz Ferdinand from Austria-Hungary. Gavrilo Princip from Serbia, who's the assassin. General Schlieffen is fun for the Schlieffen Plan. World War I. Not too many other people specifically in World War I. And then Vladimir Lenin, who is your Russian revolutionary. Do you guys need to know Hindenburg as well, or just Schlieffen? Just Schlieffen. We don't actually cover a whole lot of Hindenburg in our curriculum at this point. So, yeah, just Schlieffen, because he gets the name drop for the plan, at least. My students really want to know who Legion is. I don't blame you. There's a spy in our midst. It's fun. So, Bella, did I slow down enough for you? Did I catch them all? If there's an area that I missed, just let me know. Over here in the side chat, let's see if there's other stuff that came up. I got to go back. Vladimir Lenin. Vladimir Lenin, for your midterm, the stuff that you need to know is just what we talked about last class. So you need to know that he is a Bolshevik, which means radical left. He is heavily influenced by Karl Marx. And on the other side of the midterm, we're going to talk a little bit about what makes Leninist communism different from Marxist communism. Then you need to know peace, land, bread. You need to know that. That Lenin is going to be promising those things: an end to Russian involvement in World War I, a redistribution of land to peasant farmers, allowing some private ownership, and ample food redistributed to the people. Those are the things you'll need to know for the midterm. Beyond that, we'll do a little bit more on the other side of the midterm. Latin America. Bella, Latin American leaders are the three. Toussaint Louverture, he is um, he is in French-occupied Haiti, and he is a slave who will lead a slave uprising against the garrison of French soldiers that are left to control Haiti, while Napoleon in France is attempting to establish the French Empire. You need to know Simón Bolívar. He's really the guy that I would focus on. You need to know at least a couple countries that he liberated. So Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Colombia. You need to know that he wanted to try and create a unified Latin American state in Gran Colombia, and that it didn't work. You need to know that he also started out as a firm believer in democracy and self-determination, but as he got further into trying to lead this vast swath of South American citizens, he found that it was very difficult to rely purely on democracy, and he starts to lean towards more of a dictatorial style of leadership. And then the other one that you need to know is José de San Martin, but all you really need to know is that he's a military general, a Creole, just like Simón Bolívar, but he will start from the bottom of the continent and work his way up, whereas Simón Bolívar started at the top of the continent and worked his way down. Beyond that, you really won't need to know a whole lot more than that. Let's see. Can you go over specific movements during the Industrial Revolution? And Alyssa, welcome, is asking about capitalism versus communism. Yes, those two things are related. Okay. So when we're looking at the Industrial Revolution, the first thing we looked at was why Britain. And so let's see, Industrial Rev. You want why Britain, and that was BRITS. And then we looked at the enclosure movement, which was larger farms buying up smaller family farms, leaving many farmers out of work. Mind you, all of this is happening in Great Britain. So you have a lot of farmers that are out of work. They need a place to go to find work. Most move towards the cities because that's where they're going to find work. Cities tended to be built around moving water because you needed to have running water to fuel a factory until the invention of the steam engine, where you could take coal, boil water, and then create steam, which powers the pistons and moves the gears of industry forward. Other movements. So now you have a glut of people moving to the cities to look for work, and factories that are willing to employ anyone. So you have incredibly bad working conditions, and finding that children are going to be allowed to work in places like factory floors, mines, threshing floors, that sort of thing. And the conditions that they're working under are pretty horrible. the Sadler report is, one of the ways to remember it is to emphasize Sadler report investigates child labor for British Parliament. And the Sadler report will find that the conditions for child laborers were horrible, and that that report will lead to labor reforms such as the Child Labor Act, the 10 Hours Act, and will restructure conditions within the factories. Factories are moved, like the reason that someone would start a factory, run a factory is profit, and that's part of capitalism. Capitalism, remember when we were doing capitalism in a nutshell, communism in a nutshell? Those are in your notes, by the way. Those are really good. I told you to write down for capitalism. Capitalism is I or me. It's all about gathering wealth for you. It's very self-interested. It is a system of beliefs about how to use capital to your advantage. The premise being that if I'm trying to make the most for myself, that in order to do that, I will make life better for other people. Because if I create a product that you want, because it makes your life better, then I will sell more of it, which will make more profit for me. But if I make a product that you don't care about, then it won't make your life better and you won't buy it. And so I won't make any money. That's the concept of, it's partially the concept of the invisible hand. Yes, that is the invisible hand. And that this invisible hand, this kind of like moral, self-regulating, is what will make capitalism work. The problem is that capitalism very often requires the government to monitor it, because if the government doesn't monitor it, then you have to rely on everybody actually having ethics and morals, and that doesn't often happen. In a laissez-faire system, a hands-off system, the government would not be monitoring anything that's going on in business. They would not be regulating business, and that is the way a capitalist system is set up. In response to capitalism, especially unchecked, unbridled greed, where the workers are exploited and the business owners are making lots of money on the backs of the workers, that the response to that is socialism or communism. Socialism and communism are two different things, but for our purposes, we make them slightly interchangeable. Stick mostly with the term communism. Try not to toss around socialism too much, because that's where it gets cloudy. But communism is a response to capitalism. Communism suggests that it shouldn't be the top of the pyramid that controls all the resources and wealth and has all the power and decision making, but that the bottom of the pyramid, the workers, should be the ones in charge, and that we should actually have a society that is entirely classless, where men and women are both equal in stature and in responsibility. So that there are no rich, no poor, that there's almost no male and no female in terms of like equity, and that all those resources should be shared amongst the people. And that essentially the rules would come by an almost pure democracy. Yes, Legion has added that it does go back to the basic idea of command economy versus a market economy. A command economy is where is your communist system. We toss that word around a little bit, not as much in our class, but it is a word that comes up. Command economy, where the government is responsible, the government equals the people, and the government is responsible for redistributing all the resources and the wealth, and has command over the economy. Whereas a capital system is a market-based system where the market itself, supply and demand, and the invisible hand regulate those prices. Once you get into mixed economies, it gets very blurry. So for the midterm, at least, just be focused on capitalism or market economy and communism or command economy. CRQs. Yes, CRQs. There we go. Will be two documents, 3 questions. The first document will always have the same kinds of questions. It will either look for historical circumstances or geographic circumstances. And then the second document will always look for things like reliability, bias, point of view. And then the third question is going to ask you to relate those 2 documents together. So the third question will ask you to do things like look for turning points between those 2 documents, or cause and effect between those 2 documents. There will be 2 sets of CRQs. So there will be 2 sets of 2 documents and 3 questions. Yeah. Bella asks about communism. Is that why Ms. Steer drew a straight line for communism? Yes, that's why. Instead of drawing a triangle for social class, Ms. Steer drew a straight line for social class. So kind of letting us know that there are no social classes in a pure communist system. So we are looking at, when looking at communism in 10.3, when looking at a command economy, or looking at Karl Marx's idea, we are looking at communism in a book, communism on paper. It's not until we get to Lenin that we get to a situation where we have communism on the ground. And we will compare and contrast those, because they will be different. Communism by the book is a very different idea than how it played out on the ground. And I think I'm caught up. I believe so. Yeah, wow. The side chat is somewhat distracting. Like, I'll be in mid-sentence and I'll see something pop up. And I was like, ooh, flashy lights. So, yeah, what other questions do you have? Or do you just want to watch cat videos? We could do that. It's been that way since the stream started. Yes, it has been. I get distracted very quickly by flashy lights. I lose my train of thought, which is sometimes why I tell you guys, like, hold up just a second. Let me finish my train of thought, then go back to being totally wacky. If you need to watch cat videos, by the way, just open up a separate browser window, put them next to each other, and have review videos on one side and cat videos on the other side. And next time I need to do something about the lighting because I look totally washed out. I look even whiter, which is not a good thing. By the way, you asked earlier, Bolsheviks called themselves that because they were the majority, when in reality that was opposite. That comes from Lev, I believe. Is that Lev? I may have missaid that. I may have misspoken. So I apologize for that. But yes, the Bolsheviks they're the radical left. So generally, when you're looking at a political spectrum, the center tends to be where most people are, somewhere in the center. And then the further out you go, you get more minority. The Bolsheviks were far to the left of the Mensheviks, who are more left center. What do we need to know about the scramble for Africa? Like, do we need to learn about the Berlin Conference and things like that, or just that it happened? With regards to the scramble for Africa, you should definitely know the Berlin Conference. You should know, obviously, that it happened in Berlin, which is not a small thing considering that Germany as a country was only about 13 years old at that point. Prussia had been a powerhouse in the region for some time, but Germany was a rather new country. So for it to be hosting international conferences about carving up a continent speaks to their power in the region. Things that you should know. I think it's good to know Article 34 and Article 35 from the reading that we did on the Berlin Conference. Article 34 suggesting that when a European country staked a claim in Africa, that the remaining signers at the Berlin Conference would recognize that claim and they wouldn't try and undermine it. And Article 35 being that if you own a claim that involves coastline, you need to allow claims from the interior of the continent. You need to allow them passage to move their resources to the coast without conflict. The big reason to know those two things is because it reinforces the idea that the Berlin Conference is all about carving up Africa for resources without fighting amongst European countries, because European countries deemed themselves to be very civilized and that they shouldn't be fighting over the African continent amongst themselves. It's totally okay for them to be fighting the Africans, but it's not okay for them to be fighting amongst themselves. The Berlin Conference is the one with the cartoon and the pie. It's also the one with the cartoon and the nations stretching the continent of Africa like a trampoline. Both of those. It was split between 14 countries. I can't substantiate 14 countries, but the ones that we talked about were definitely Britain, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, and then Portugal, the Netherlands. Let's see. I believe that those were the 7 that we talked about. So whether or not you need to know those specific countries, probably not. But you do need to recognize that your major World War I powers are pretty much all present at the Berlin Conference. And you do need to know that that happened in the late 1800s, specifically 1884 and 1885. But you don't need to know specific. So let's see. Looks like Gabe did a little extra research and found that it was 14. Cool. Awesome. Were the Boers and the Zulus already fighting over diamonds before the British came in? That is a fantastic question. That's a fantastic question. I can't say that I know. You know what? Lionheart, why don't you do a quick search for that? I don't know for certain. I would suspect that the Boers being Dutch colonizers probably had been fighting the Zulus, because for the most part, people don't like to be colonized. But the discovery of diamonds was what brought the British in. So that's what will lead to conflict between the Boers and the British. So let's see. Bella, are we going to need to know all the countries on the map? Not all the countries on the map, but you should know the stuff that we labeled, which is probably what you meant. You should know the countries that we labeled. And you should know in general their geographic relationship to each other. If for nothing more than it's helpful to be able to envision that in your mind. There will not be a section of the test. There will not be a section of the test that requires you to label something. So you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry about that. So, yeah. Are we going to need to label a map? No, Haley, you will not need to label a map. You're welcome. Just need to know where things are, loosely. You wanted free points. Fair enough. Would have been easy points. Yeah. We hammer those things in our class because it becomes very helpful when we start to get into things like World War I and we talk about central powers, and it helps to make sense of central powers dividing Europe in half. Where it really becomes helpful is when we get to the Cold War and we start to look at the United States influencing territories and the Soviet Union influencing territories, and knowing where they are and having some geographic proximity to each other. Like, that stuff becomes important. So, yeah. Yeah. Are there other questions? Will we have to label a map? No. You will not have to label a map. Eastern Front versus Western Front. Just like conditions, like how are they different? Eastern Front is going to be Germany, largely. Germany, France, England, and the United States. The United States, not until 1918. It's earmarked by trench warfare. It's largely a stalemate with very little movement between the forward lines. Once the armies entrench in, I want to say it was September of 1914, those lines don't change significantly. Sometimes entire battles will be fought over just mere yards. And so when you're thinking about the Western Front, you want to think about trenches, you want to think about trench foot, you want to think about all the stuff that we were looking at when we were unpacking those primary source documents about the trenches. Then the Eastern Front is between Germany and Austria-Hungary and the Russians. And that front happens over larger expanses of land, varying territories from the Balkan Mountains and all the way down into Ukraine and the large expanses of fields, all the way up to St. Petersburg. So the conditions were much more. They weren't entrenched, so there was a lot more movement. And the Germans absolutely decimate the Russian army. It becomes that meat grinder that we were talking about, where Tsar Nicholas is sending hundreds of thousands of ill-equipped peasants to fight on the front. Let's see. Where were the Eastern and Western fronts located? Well, Legion hit that one out of the park. The Eastern Front is largely between Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Russia. And then the Western Front is between Germany, France. It's basically the border of Germany, France, and Belgium, but will also involve Great Britain and the United States fighting there at least. Gabe says, fire is the allied powers and a go is the central powers. That's totally correct. And yeah, killer. Awesome, awesome. See if I missed anything. Any other questions? Sweet. Any other questions? So we can always hang out for a little while. Let's see. Oh, don't forget about your enduring issue essays. Can you go over history? Yes. You just need to find that video on YouTube. It's like 28 minutes long. The History of Everything, I think is what it's called. It's the same guy who made the History of Japan, and just laugh like crazy because it's awesome. But don't forget about your enduring issue essay. There's a certain structure to it. And that structure, if you stay within that structure, it gets pretty easy. You're essentially looking at, let's see, enduring issue essay. You need 5 paragraphs. Boom. Paragraph 1. Enduring issue. Then define it. Then 1 sentence about how that issue is present in your 3 documents. Then paragraphs 2 through 4 are your 1 document per paragraph. Begin with the nested issue, which just means how does the enduring issue present itself in your document. Then, how does that nested issue, affect people? Then outside information. Then continuity and I have to go to the next one. And how has the issue changed over time or remained the same? Last paragraph is conclusion. And that should sum up the formula. Remember, your enduring issue can come from that enduring issues packet. That's fair, but it doesn't have to. So it's okay. It's okay if it doesn't. You just have to be able to define it and justify it as justify your issue as an enduring issue. So there was some chat about where the midterm is located. Yes, it's in the gym unless you have a separate location. If you have a separate location, go to the testing center and they have a list of where those separate locations are. They will be able to tell you that. Let's see. So the Zulu Nation, Britain, and the Dutch were fighting during the Berlin Conference. Did the Berlin Conference overlap the Boer War? Yeah, I was pretty sure that the Berlin Conference happened before the Boer War. Yeah. Thank you, Legion. Legion gets an A+ this morning. Legion must have gotten up very early in the morning and consumed more coffee than I have. The Boer War. No, it was right above that. Off topic, but I'm talking music history with you. Christian Brown talking music history with me. Dear, dear, dear. Music history will not be on the midterm, but that course does start on the other side of the midterm, and that's going to be fun. So, yeah. Yeah, no, I wish it was too. I wish music history was on the midterm. That would be pretty awesome. But at this point, we would only be up through we would be doing a lot of classical music. You would be, in the Romantic period, I think. I'd have to ask Mel. Mel knows the history of classical music really well. But rock and roll as a musical style wasn't quite a thing yet. Rock and roll isn't really going to be a thing. That's something I'm really good at. Well, good. Everybody does love some Beethoven to start the morning. I do agree with that. But the students, at least, are going to be intimately acquainted with some Russian classical music when we get back from the midterm. Because once we hit the Russian Revolution, I like to play a lot of music that's current of the era. And so we're going to get into some Shostakovich and some Rachmaninoff, and that stuff is just epic. It is so great. Do I have an alternate location? You wouldn't. You might. If you think you do, if you have an IP or a 504 that indicates that you have an alternate location, just go to the testing center, and they will get you set up. Oh, and definitely Tchaikovsky. Legion. Definitely Tchaikovsky, because that stuff is off the chain. It is truly, like I tell the students that it's like the metal of classical music. It is just some seriously thunderous stuff. Do you know where our class is located in the gym? I don't. I will be setting that up Wednesday morning. I like to set it up as close to the science wing side of the gym as I can, but I will be there will be big old signs. It'll be hard to miss. Most of the other teachers just use kind of a boring block script with their name on it. Mine usually have memes all over them, or pictures of Darth Vader or Jimi Hendrix. So look for something that's flashy. You'll find it. You'll be good. I should write your name in wingdings. I should do that, though I think we would need a universal translator to know which one is like what the wingdings are. But I would be the only one in wingdings. So, students would know. Yeah. Other global history midterm questions. I'm really curious who Legion is. Like, this is a mystery that must be solved. You watch, Legion is Wabels. I doubt it. Yeah, if I haven't hit your question, if I accidentally skipped over it, go ahead and ask it again. If there are other things that you want to know about or are struggling with, they could be like just related to the midterm itself or something specific within the course. Ooh, maybe. I think Lionheart might be onto something. Maybe Legion is Mr. Donroe. That could be something. Drat. We thought we had you. Thought we had you, Legion. No way. Is it Miss Steer? Nope. Okay. Well, Legion, Miss Steer was our student teacher this fall, and pretty awesome. I wonder if Legion is maybe an AP student? One of the AP students who likes to come and hang out at the Chungster. Oh man. Sarah's he's a student, he doesn't go to the school. Yeah. I think you could be right. But it's cool either way. It was fun. Oh dear. Let's see. Is it time for more coffee? The world may never know, Chungster says. So true. Just a history nerd passing through. Well, we love that you're passing through because you're adding to the discussion, which is awesome. So I will let you guys chat amongst yourself because I see that there's a fair amount of guessing as to who folks are, which is fun. But if you have any global related questions, drat. Oh, I'm back now. Sweet. Wonder what that was all about. So if you were just joining us, we are trying to figure out who the heck Legion is. Well, particularly where Legion is from. And they're trying to figure out who the Chungster is. If there are global questions, drop them into the side chat over there, and I will gladly handle those for you. Is Brad Day on the track here? Oh, if Brad Day on the track is present, he must make himself known. He's a living legend. Okay. Will you guys discuss Legion for a second? Legion is from New York. Okay. Top off on the coffee. Be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. Oh, good. He's not from Penfield. Canandaigua? Nobody's from Canandaigua. Greece? Fairport. Ooh, Fairport. All righty. So Legion's from Fairport? Get cash at the midterm. Slow down a second here. So is Legion a Victor teacher who lives in Fairport? Ooh, it's the sun. Yeah, I'm still really curious as to who this Legion character is, because so far we figured out that the Chungster is Brad. Brad Day on the track, that is, for those of you who are SoundCloud or Spotify listeners. Brad Day on the track. But Legion is apparently from Fairport. Fairport. Ooh. Well, $50 whole. So we're still hanging out here. I'm more than willing to field any of your questions for the global midterm. So far, we've talked about, significance, like significant names and absolutism and Napoleon and Industrial Revolution. We did a little bit of imperialism, specifically Japan, World War I and the fronts. And then what's the best way to study all this info throughout the year for the midterm? That's a great question. And when did the Enlightenment start? The Enlightenment period, we pegged it at 1750. The best way to study. Well, a Quizlet link. I don't know. Honestly, I've never used Quizlet. So if anybody out there who's has made a Quizlet, I think you make them. If you have and care to share it with your in classroom with your class, that'd be awesome. If there are resources that you have that are working for you that you want to share with your class, just post them. Here, I'm gonna walk with you guys a little. Yeah, Legion should make a Quizlet. I'm gonna go get my coffee, but I'll take you with me. Okay. So ways to study. This is my dining room, by the way. That's my dining room table. Bet. Wait a minute. Legion, is bet a clue? So, here's my coffee. Okay. It's my kitchen. We are heading back this way. Where's the massive cat? Oh, wait. He was around. If he comes back out, I will bring the cat over because he's pretty cool. So ways to study. Here's what I would do. I would do flashcards. Definitely. Flashcards for key terms are fantastic. I really, personally, I like those cause and effect timelines. Do one for each unit. I think those are really good. Vocabulary lists are good. There are review videos and review videos and playlists in classroom that I think are really helpful. Is there anything else you should know for the midterm? That midterm outline that I gave you. If there's anything on that outline that you don't know, that's where you should ask questions. But you should know everything on that outline. That's what I would know. So, and yes, I totally know what bet means because I was taught bet by a student because, you know, I'm cool and stuff. So anything else you should know from the midterm or ways to study? Yeah, those are the ways that I think are most effective. Timelines, flashcards. I find personally review videos really helpful. But if you're someone who doesn't read like regularly or doesn't enjoy reading, just going back and reading your notes, not helpful. Not helpful at all. So don't do that. Do the things that that you enjoy. If you're someone who's an avid YouTube watcher, watch YouTube videos, specifically the ones that I've linked in your classroom, because those at least I've watched through and connect with stuff that we've done in class. Yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah. Any other questions? Other than who Legion is? And I am occasionally scanning to see if our plus size cat is around. So, oh, yeah, it is Martin Luther King Day. You should go into on this YouTube channel. I have a playlist of Martin Luther King's speeches, and they're fantastic. They're really good. I tend to listen to those somewhat regularly. So take a listen. And meanwhile, let's find out who Legion is. And I'll see if I can't find Buddy. So let's take a walk. Okay? Yeah, let's take a walk. So let's see. We're now in my living room, and it's very red. Is he over here? No. He may be hiding. Let me see if Mel knows. Do you know where Buddy is? Yeah. He's hiding. All right. Yeah. It appears that the plus size kitten is hiding. So maybe I will go grab him from hiding. Meow at him loudly. Yeah, that tends to work. Legion doesn't work at Victor. Legion, did you once work at Victor? Sit quietly and wait. Nope, never. Do I know you? This is really weirding me out. No, sir. Wow. Are you an adult? No. Oh, this is not good. Okay. Well, a super smart kid. That's for darn sure. Let's see. Did I miss any questions? Any questions? I don't think I've missed any questions. Again, I'm here for questions about your global history midterm. And if you don't have any questions, we can just hang out. Like I said, I'll just watch cat videos on my one of my friends at Victor, his last name rhymes with cinnamon. Oh. Sure. Well, hold on. I'll go grab him out of hiding. Talk amongst yourselves. We still need to know who Legion is. All righty. Come make your close-up. Here he is. This is Nigel. Say hi to everybody, Nigel. Yeah. He's a big guy. He's a big boy. Yeah, he's a handsome fella. We sure do like him an awful lot. Yeah. Oh, they say you're pretty, buddy. You're a pretty guy. Yeah, he's a handsome fella. I wish I could bring him to school. Huh? Come educate the children? Yeah. Legion is a cat. Of course he is. Do you think we should have a class pet? Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. We should definitely. No, a fish is boring. Hawkeye 209, a fish is boring. Not when you can have a big fella like this, huh? A lizard? No way. I'm a class kitten. Say hi, buddy. All right, I'm gonna go return you. All right, we'll be right back. Oh, little guy. Here we go. All righty. Here comes kitten number 2. Here's our other kitten. Her name is Harriet, and she's a sweetheart. We like Harriet. Yeah, she's cute. Let's see if she's all washed out, but uh-oh, and she's stuck. Can you get up? There you go. Oh. Yeah, she's more washed out than me. She's really white, though. So let's see. Did I miss any questions? I did not miss any questions. We are just talking about a class guinea pig, which would be all right if the guinea pig could run around a bunch. But, you know, animals in cages. I'm just not a fan of animals in cages. Still don't know who Legion is. Who is Legion? It's too bad I can't just like Google Legion. It's not helping me. I just did the little click on the side next to the comment, and there's a thing about putting somebody in timeout. That's really funny. Don't worry, Legion. I'm not putting you in timeout. I just think it's funny. Sounds like disciplining a 4-year-old. I'm putting you in timeout. Anyway, if there are any questions, we've been online for was it Liam or Derek who told you? Yeah, that's who I was thinking it might be Liam or Derek was on. Got my yearbook. So we've been online for 1 hour and 47 minutes. I'm going to give it another 15 minutes or so. And if you have specific questions, go for it. If not, that's cool. You can always hit me up in Classroom, and I will do my best to respond today as promptly as I can. I don't anticipate going outside to shovel until a little bit later because it's like 0 degrees outside, which is just stupid. And as much as the last half an hour have mostly been about my cat, I will probably still keep this video up online through the midterm, just in case it's helpful to somebody. But it seems like the main focus at this point is who the heck is Legion? We should make that a bonus question on the midterm exam. Who is Legion? Legion. I am Legion, for we are many. Dun, dun, dun. So let's see. Are there any new emails or questions or what have you? It came in on the emails. Let's see if there's any. Nope, just questions about where midterm is located. So again, the midterm is in the gym, unless you have a specific location. And at that point, if you don't know what your location is, just go to the testing center and they will hook you up. They will let you know. The testing center, by the way, is down the hallway from 205, heading towards the main staircase. Dum, dum, dum. Okay, so it appears that we are zooming in on who Legion is. This is a riot. Oh dear. You guys are nutty. Totally nutty. There are no relevant questions to the exam. Yes, I agree. We have not had any relevant questions to the exam in quite some time, which is okay, Official Zay. We asked, there were a bunch that were asked earlier, and there were a bunch that were asked earlier, and now we've just kind of gone off the rails here trying to figure out who this Legion character is, because this Legion character knows a lot about global history, which is super cool. which is okay. But if you do have questions, I still got another 9 minutes or so. I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, we're just... Yeah, no, we don't cover the Roman Empire in Global 10. That's Global 9. And you probably know more about the Roman Empire than I do. That is not a specialty of mine at all. So any global history questions are welcome for the midterm exam. If not, we'll log off shortly, and then I will attend to the massive snow that is piling up outside my garage, which is not fun. Wait, says Lionheart 3003. Can you talk a little bit more about Lenin? Jasmine says, sure. The things you need to know about Lenin for the midterm are kind of only a few. You need to know that he is influenced by Karl Marx. And then you need to know that he's a Bolshevik, meaning that he is radical left. You need to know that he promised peace, land, and bread, and that for the most part, he gave all of them. And that's about it for the midterm. On the other side of the midterm, you'll need to know more about Lenin. But we haven't really gotten into the Russian Revolution. And Lenin only plays a very small part on your midterm exam. So just stick with that for now, Jasmine. Does that hit your question? Or are there specifics? Mm-hmm. And Lionheart, did you have something a question you wanted to ask? All right, sweet. Glad to hear it, Jasmine. Good. And Gabe, have a great day. Stay warm. Study hard. You'll do great. I will hang out. You talk about crazy guy. Do we need to know him for the midterm? Crazy guy. Help me with crazy guy. I forgot his name. Okay. Crazy guy. Oh, Rasputin. He doesn't really come up on the midterm. He's great outside information, though. He's the kind of guy that you would reference during issue essay as outside information to a document about the Russian Revolution or about the Tsar. Yeah. Beyond that, he's not a specific focus of a portion of the midterm. If you do want to know more about him, though, there is a really great. Let me get that. Yeah, this one. Drop this in here. It's a pretty good quick video of Rasputin. Latin American liberators. Sure. Latin American liberators. You want to focus on Simón Bolívar. He's the guy that you want to focus on the most because he's the guy that we actually read documents from. The other two that we encountered were Toussaint Louverture, who liberated the colony of Haiti from the French, and José de San Martin, who is another Creole military general from Argentina, who's going to link up with Simón Bolívar in liberating most of South America from the Spanish. But the guy that you need, that I would focus on, is Simón Bolívar. He's where we spent most of our time. See ya, Hawkeye. Yeah, though he's the guy. Does that hit? Focus you, Jasmine? Hopefully that points you in a direction. Can you highlight some stuff out of the review packet? What stuff in particular, Official Zay? Do you want me to like zero in on things that you should focus on in the review packet? Because ideally you would know the majority of that review packet. Because that's basically an outline of everything that we've done this year up until now. Some main points. Sure. Should definitely know cause and effect between your units. So you should have an understanding of what caused the Enlightenment and then what effects the Enlightenment had. You should tend to know what caused the period of revolutions and then what effects those revolutions had. What caused the Industrial Revolution and what effects the Industrial Revolution had, that sort of thing. I would definitely know the stories of imperialism. So knowing the story of the Belgian Congo, knowing the story of British East India Company as it relates to the sepoys and Indian culture. I would know the Sepoy Rebellion. I would know the British involvement in China and the Opium War and the treaty. Like, know those little stories. That tends to be helpful, especially if you can think of them like stories that have a beginning, a middle, and an end, because then you won't feel like you're memorizing specific facts, but you're memorizing a narrative. Other things to highlight. I would definitely know the differences between how Japan and China interacted with Western powers. I would definitely know that. Definite main causes of World War I. Got to know it. Got to know the major players in World War I. Should also know the Treaty of Versailles. You should know its effects. Yeah. I mean, those are the big movements. But beyond that, like, that review packet is kind of what you need to know. So that's where I would be most focused. Is social Darwinism the same thing as survival of the fittest? Sort of. Survival of the fittest is the summary phrase for Darwinism in general. When you add social Darwinism to it, it becomes survival of the fittest amongst countries. So the premise being that if I'm an industrialized country, I'm clearly more advanced than a non-industrialized country. Thus, I have more of a right to exist. Kind of like a more advanced, a more developed animal will survive over a lesser advanced animal, lesser adapted animal. This is the same premise. It's just amongst countries, and they tend to look at it based upon technology. I'm a country that is pre-industrialized. I don't have modern weaponry, but then there's a European country that has modern weaponry and is industrialized and has a modern banking system and modes of transportation, that they are more advanced. Thus, they are more advanced human beings. So social Darwinism is about survival of the fittest, but amongst people, as opposed to the animal kingdom. Does that answer your question, Alyssa? I hope it does. I have some late arrivers and some early departers. Do we land who Legion is? Legion has brought a lot of enjoyment today. I'm glad you're with us, Legion. It's fun. And Official Zay, are there other questions that you have? Or let's see, who are the other newcomers? Oh, definitely. Yeah. Legion brings up the eugenics movement with the Nazis. Yeah, definitely. I just haven't told them that story yet. But they'll learn about the mapping of the skull and that sort of stuff, and it just gets absolutely nutty. Which is a disgusting form of racism. World War II is after the midterm, as is the rise of authoritarianism, which is wicked fun. Is there a person that comes up the most on the midterm? No, not really. Not a person. But I would not a person. I'm sorry. What is the main enduring issues that we should know for the midterm? Main enduring issues. There aren't really main enduring issues, because enduring issues are they can be almost anything, so long as you can justify it, so long as you can support enduring issues. An enduring issue could be just about anything. So you can boil a lot of enduring issues down to power, conflict, impact of technology tends to be a big one. Nationalism, militarism, that sort of thing. So it's hard to really say that there are specific enduring issues that you should focus on. It's more just being able to determine what an enduring issue is and make a case for it. Is the test fairly easy to pass? Well, Legion's answer is correct. If you study, then you should be fine. The other things you want to make sure to do are you really want to make sure you get a good night's sleep. You want to make sure you eat breakfast. You don't want to be rushing around, so that when you get to the midterm, you are rested, you're focused, you're able to read through the questions carefully, because that's really, really important. So much of this test is a reading test. Should we study all the mustache beard guys? Otto von Bismarck, definitely. The Italian unifiers, don't worry about them. The only guy that I would bring up from Italy would be Count Camillo Cavour, who's the RIT neck beard guy. Beyond that, don't worry about the Italian guys. But Otto, definitely should know Otto. The multiple choice, I believe, is 50 to 55% weighted, and then then the CRQs and the essay make up the remaining. So yeah, what did Cavour do? Cavour was the prime minister of a region called Piedmont Sardinia, which is in the northwestern portion of Italy that borders France. And he was responsible for creating treaties with Napoleon III to help defend northern Italy against Austria. Austria was very concerned that the northern portion of Italy would unite with the rest of the boot and then become a strong nationalistic movement, kind of like what happened in France. And Austria was very concerned that you'd have another unified nation that tries to take over all of Europe. So they wanted to keep Italy separated into its many kingdoms. And Cavour, wanting to unify Italy, made a defensive treaty with Austria to help defend the Italian states against. He made a defensive treaty with France to help defend the Italian states from Austrian control. So that's the only reason why he comes up at all, is because he was more of the treaty maker, and so much of the 1800s, when we were studying it, is motivated by those treaties. So, excuse this, by the way. Honestly, it's so cold that my nose is running. So let's see. Got just a couple more minutes. Are there any other questions other than the identity of Legion? Legion, for we are many. Can you talk about Bismarck? Sure. The things that are important to know about Bismarck are things like blood and iron. To understand that Bismarck wanted to create a strong, unified Germany, that he was not at all interested in your yes, we can kind of motivational speeches and what have you. But he was much more about a grounded, the facts on the ground kind of political stance, which is called realpolitik. And blood and iron being the military and industrial complex working hand in hand, creating a very, very strong military state in Germany. The kind of military that would win very easily over its neighboring military powers. And so Bismarck used that strong military to establish a sense of nationalism, by winning victories over Austria and over Denmark and over France in the Franco-Prussian War in 1871. And he is the guy who he absolutely called World War I many years before it happened. He's the guy who referred to, he said that, I don't know when it will happen, but if there is to be a European conflict, it will definitely start with some damn fool event in the Balkans. He was totally right. Yep. So, anything else? So it's about time to sign off. Any last minute burning questions? If not, you can always hit me up on Classroom. And I'll be happy to answer those. But with that, I think I'm going to close down, and the identity of Legion will have to live in mystery. Or maybe one of you guys can tell me when we get to the midterm, because I'll be curious to find out. All right. You guys are awesome. Study hard. Stay warm. Let me know how I can be of help to you. See ya.